Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the New Haven, watching the massive alien ship surround her colony vessel. The enemy fleet appeared out of nowhere, their dark metal hulls blocking out the stars. Each ship was 3 times larger than the New Haven, with strange weapons pointing directly at them. "Captain, they're sending a message," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. Her voice shook slightly as she worked the controls. "Put it on screen," Lisa replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The main screen flickered, then showed a creature that made several crew members gasp. It stood over 7 feet tall with dark green scales covering its body. Its head was long and narrow, almost like a skull, with burning yellow eyes. Sharp teeth showed when it spoke. "I am King Vorthak of the Zarkonian Empire," the creature said, in perfect English. Its voice was deep and threatening. "You humans have entered our space. You will surrender now or face the consequences." Lisa stepped forward. "I'm Captain Lisa Martinez. We're peaceful colonists heading to New Terra. We didn't know this was your territory." King Vorthak laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Ignorance is not an excuse. Your species is weak and pathetic. You will become our slaves or you will die." Colonel Jake Turner, standing beside Lisa, whispered, "Captain, our weapons are no match for theirs. We have to consider surrender." But Lisa wasn't listening to Jake. She was studying the alien king, watching how he moved and spoke. Something about his behavior seemed familiar, like the bullies she had faced in school years ago. "There is another option," King Vorthak continued. "Your species may choose a champion to face me in single combat. If your champion wins, we will leave you in peace. If your champion loses, you become our property." "What are the rules?" Lisa asked. "The battle takes place in the grand arena on the neutral moon of Kalos. Each fighter may bring 1 weapon. The fight continues until 1 fighter is dead. Those are the only rules." The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in silence. Lisa looked around at her crew. Their faces showed fear and hopelessness. She had 400 people on this ship, all counting on her to keep them safe. Commander Ryan Brooks, her second in command, stepped up beside her. "Captain, we need to pick our best fighter. That would be Sergeant Williams or maybe Lieutenant Carter." "No," Lisa said quietly. "I'll fight him myself." The bridge erupted in shocked voices. Everyone started talking at once, trying to convince her to change her mind. "Captain, you can't be serious," Ryan said. "You're not a soldier. You're a ship." "Captain." "Exactly," Lisa replied. "That's why it has to be me." Dr. Helen Kim, the ship's doctor, shook her head. "Lisa, this is suicide. That creature is built for fighting. Look at those claws, those teeth. You don't stand a chance." Lisa walked to the main screen and stared at the empty space where King Vorthak had been. "Maybe not, but I've been thinking about what he said. He called us weak and pathetic. He expects us to send our strongest soldier, someone who will try to match him blow for blow." "That makes sense," Jake said. "Why wouldn't we send our best fighter?" "Because our best fighter still can't beat him," Lisa explained. "Look at the size of him, look at those ships. They've obviously been doing this for a long time. They've probably faced hundreds of different species and they've won every time." Amy looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm reading some old transmissions from this area. The Zarkonians have conquered at least 20 different planets in the last 50 years. Every time they offered the same challenge, every time they won." Lisa nodded. "That's what I thought. So sending our best soldier is just giving them what they expect. They know how to beat soldiers." "Then what do you suggest?" Ryan asked. Lisa turned to face her crew. "I suggest we don't play their game. They expect a warrior. They expect someone who will bring advanced weapons and try to fight them the way they fight. But what if we do something completely different?" Dr. Kim frowned. "Like what?" "I don't know yet," Lisa admitted. "But I know that doing the expected thing will definitely fail, so we need to try something unexpected." The next few hours were filled with arguments and discussions. Ryan tried everything he could think of to change Lisa's mind. He brought up regulations, duty to the crew, and the fact that she had no combat training. "Captain," he said during their private meeting in her quarters, "I've run every scenario through the computer. There's no way you can win against that thing in a fair fight." "You're right," Lisa said. "So I won't fight fair." "What do you mean?" Lisa sat down at her desk and pulled up the transmission recording of King Vorthak. She studied his face, his movements, the way he held himself. "Look at him, Ryan. He's proud, arrogant. He's so sure of his superiority that he's willing to risk everything on a single fight. That tells me something about his psychology. It tells me he's confident because he always wins. Maybe. Or maybe it tells me he's never faced anyone who really challenged that confidence." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "Every species they've conquered probably sent their best warrior with their best weapon. And every time the Zarkonians won because they're better at being warriors." Ryan shook his head. "So how is this different?" "Because I'm not a warrior. I'm a problem solver. And this is just another problem that needs solving." The next morning, Lisa called a meeting with her senior staff. The room was tense as everyone waited to hear her final decision. "I've made up my mind," she announced. "I will be humanity's champion in the arena." The protest started immediately, but Lisa held up her hand for silence. "I want everyone to understand something," she said. "This isn't about being brave or heroic. This is about giving humanity its best chance to survive, and I believe that chance lies in doing something they don't expect." Dr. Kim leaned forward. "What exactly are you planning?" Lisa smiled for the first time since the aliens arrived. "I'm going to break their rules without actually breaking their rules. They said each fighter can bring one weapon, but they never said I had to bring one." "You're going in unarmed?" Jake asked, his face going pale. "That's exactly what I'm going to do," Lisa said, "and that's going to be our advantage." The room fell silent as her crew tried to understand her logic. Outside the windows, the alien ships waited like dark clouds, ready to decide humanity's fate. Lisa spent the next 3 days learning everything she could about the Zarkonians. Dr. Helen Kim had managed to gather biological data from their transmissions, while Lieutenant Ben Carter worked on understanding their culture and fighting methods. "Their bone structure is incredibly dense," Dr. Kim explained as they sat in the medical bay. "These creatures evolved from predators. Their natural armor could probably stop most of our small weapons." Lisa studied the anatomical diagrams on the screen. "What about weak points?" "Joint connections mainly. The armor has to bend somewhere, but getting close enough to hit those spots would be nearly impossible in a normal fight." Ben Carter joined, them with his cultural analysis. "I've been studying recordings of their previous arena battles. The Zarkonians have made this into entertainment for their empire. They broadcast every fight across their territory." "Show me," Lisa said. Ben activated the holographic display, showing grainy footage of past battles. Lisa watched as creature after creature faced Zarkonian kings in the arena. Each challenger was impressive in their own way. Some were massive, others were fast, many carried advanced weapons. "They all lost," Ben said grimly. "Every single one. Some lasted longer than others, but the result was always the same." Lisa watched King Vorthak's previous fights. He moved like a dancer despite his size. His energy staff could cut through metal like paper. When he struck, his opponents usually died instantly. "Wait," Lisa said, pausing the recording. "Go back to that part." Ben reversed the footage to show King Vorthak fighting a tall, thin alien with 4 arms. "Look at how he moves," Lisa said. "He's incredibly skilled, but he has patterns. Watch his footwork." They studied the battle frame by frame. Lisa began to see what she was looking for. King Vorthak was indeed a master fighter, but he fought the same way every time. He relied on his strength, his armor, and his superior weapons. Every challenger tried to beat him at his own game, Lisa observed. They brought their strongest warriors and their best weapons. They all fought like traditional warriors. "Because that's what works in most situations," Ben pointed out. "The strongest usually wins." "But not always," Lisa said. "Sometimes the smartest wins instead." Over the following days, Lisa began physical training with Sergeant Kate Williams. But instead of focusing on strength or weapons training, She worked on speed and endurance. "Captain, I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish," Kate said, as Lisa ran through agility drills. "You're getting faster, but you're still no match for that alien in terms of raw power." "I'm not trying to match his power," Lisa replied, breathing heavily from the exercise. "I'm trying to find a different way to win." She also spent hours studying the arena itself. The Grand Arena on Kalos was an ancient structure, built from black stone and surrounded by energy shields. The fighting floor was about the size of a football field with various pillars and platforms scattered around. "The arena has been modified many times over the years," Ben reported. "Different species have added their own touches when they controlled it, but the basic structure is very old." "What about the building materials?" Lisa asked. "Mostly natural stone reinforced with metal supports, very strong but not indestructible." Lisa nodded, filing away this information. An idea was beginning to form in her mind, but she wasn't ready to share it yet. Commander Ryan Brooks tried one more time to change her mind. "Lisa, I've been thinking, what if we sent a robot instead, or used some kind of remote-controlled fighter?" "The Zarkonians would consider that dishonorable," Lisa replied. "They'd probably attack the ship immediately. Besides, they specifically asked for a champion from our species. They want to prove their superiority over humans, not over our technology." "Then let me go," Ryan said desperately. "I have more combat training than you do." Lisa looked at her, old friend with sympathy. "Ryan, you're a good soldier, but you're still thinking like a soldier. You'd try to fight him with honor, using proper techniques and strategies, and you'd lose just like all the others. So, what makes you different?" Lisa smiled. "I cheat." Ryan stared at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't believe in fair fights, when survival is at stake. I believe in winning by any means necessary as long as I don't break the actual rules." 2 days before the battle, Lisa made her weapon choice official. She submitted a formal declaration to the Zarkonians. She would enter the arena with no weapons. The announcement caused an uproar on both ships. The Zarkonians seemed confused and insulted. Lisa's own crew thought she had lost her mind. "This is insane," Jake said at the emergency staff meeting. "How can you fight that monster with nothing?" "I'm not fighting him with nothing," Lisa corrected. "I'm fighting him with everything except a weapon." Amy looked confused. "I don't understand. The difference?" Lisa stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the alien fleet. "The Zarkonians expect me to bring humanity's most advanced weapon. They've prepared for that. They know how to defend against energy weapons, projectile weapons, even exotic technology." She turned back to her crew. "But they haven't prepared for someone who brings no weapon at all. They can't defend against something they've never encountered." Dr. Kim shook her head. "But how will you hurt him without a weapon?" "Who says I need to hurt him?" Lisa asked. The room fell silent as her crew tried to process this statement. "The rules say the fight continues until one fighter is dead," Ben said slowly. "That means someone has to die." "Yes," Lisa agreed. "But the rules don't say I have to be the one who kills him." Commander Brooks stood up abruptly. "Captain, you're talking in riddles. Please explain what you're planning." Lisa looked around, at her crew, these people who had become her family over the years of space travel. She hated keeping them in the dark, but she also knew that her plan only worked if it remained unexpected. "I can't tell you everything," she said. "But I can tell you this. I have studied every second of footage from that arena. I know exactly what I'm walking into, and I have a plan that I believe will work." "Based on what?" Ryan asked. "Based on the fact that the Zarkonians have never lost because they've never faced an opponent who refused to play by their expectations. They're not just physically superior, they're psychologically prepared for traditional combat." Lisa walked back to her chair and sat down. "But I'm not going to give them traditional combat. I'm going to give them something they've never seen before. And that confusion, that moment of uncertainty, might be enough to tip the balance." The meeting ended with more questions than answers, but Lisa's decision was final. In 2 days, she would face King Vorthak in the Grand Arena, armed with nothing but her wits and a plan she hoped was clever enough to keep humanity free. The journey to Kalos took 2 days, with the Zarkonian fleet escorting the New Haven to the neutral moon. Lisa used the time to finalize her preparations and say what might be her final goodbyes to her crew. The moon of Kalos was a barren world, covered in black rock and ancient structures. The grand arena sat in the center of the largest crater, a massive stone coliseum that had witnessed thousands of battles over the centuries. Ships from dozens of different species surrounded the arena, all coming to watch what they expected to be humanity's defeat. As the New Haven entered orbit, Lisa received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Trell, a representative from the Hegemony Council, requested permission to come aboard. The Council was a loose organization of species that had survived encounters with the Zarkonians by surrendering immediately. Trell was a tall, thin creature with pale blue skin and large black eyes. He moved gracefully as he entered Lisa's ready room, but his expression showed deep concern. "Captain Martinez," Trell said in a voice like wind chimes, "I have come to offer you one final opportunity to reconsider your choice of champion." "Thank you, Ambassador, but my decision is final," Lisa replied. Trell sat down across from her, his long fingers tapping nervously on the table. "You do not understand what you are facing. King Vorthak has killed 47 challengers in single combat. Each one was the greatest warrior their species could produce. Each one brought weapons that could level mountains or pierce stars themselves." "I appreciate your concern," Lisa said, "but someone has to face him, and I believe I'm humanity's best choice." "Best choice?" Trell's voice rose in pitch. "Captain, with respect, you are not even a soldier. You have no armor, no weapons, no special abilities. What could you possibly hope to accomplish against a Zarkonian king?" Lisa studied the alien's face, seeing genuine worry there. "Tell me, Ambassador, in all those battles you mentioned, did any challenger ever try something completely unexpected?" Trell thought for a moment. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did anyone ever try to win without using traditional combat methods?" "Do not understand. Combat is combat. The strong defeat the weak. That is the way of things." Lisa nodded. "That's exactly the problem. Everyone thinks that way, including King Vorthak. But sometimes the most obvious solution isn't the right one." After Trell left, clearly unconvinced, Lisa spent her last evening recording messages for her family back on Earth. The delay in communications meant they wouldn't receive the recordings for months, but she wanted them to understand why she had made this choice. "Mom, Dad," she said to the camera, "by the time you get this message, you'll probably know what happened. I want you to understand that I didn't do this to be a hero. I did it because it was the right thing to do. 400 people are counting on me to keep them safe, and this was the only way I could see to do that." She paused, thinking of her childhood home, her parents' garden, the smell of her mother's cooking. "I know you raised me to avoid fighting, to solve problems with words instead of violence. But sometimes violence finds you whether you want it or not. When that happens, you have to be smart enough to survive it." Later that night, Chief Engineer Danny Price visited her quarters. Danny was a big man with gentle eyes who had served with Lisa for 5 years. He looked uncomfortable as he sat down. "Captain, I've been thinking," he said slowly. "What if we sabotage the arena? I could probably overload their power systems or mess with the gravity controls." Lisa shook her head. "Danny, if we cheat openly, they'll know. The Zarkonians would consider it an insult and attack the ship. Besides, there are probably hundreds of different species watching this fight. We need to win cleanly, or our victory won't mean anything." "But Captain, you're asking me to let you walk into that arena knowing you might not come back." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm asking you to trust me. I know this seems impossible, but I have a plan. It's risky, but it's our best shot." Danny looked at her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "You've never let us down before, Captain. I guess I have to believe you won't start now." The morning of the battle arrived with no ceremony. Lisa woke early and ate a light breakfast, knowing her stomach was too nervous for anything heavy. She dressed in her standard uniform, dark blue with the New Haven insignia on the shoulder. Commander Ryan Brooks met her in the shuttle bay. "In RA?" Face was pale and his hands shook slightly as he helped her into the transport shuttle. "Lisa," he said quietly, "I've run every possible scenario through the computer. I can't find a single way for you to win this fight." Lisa checked her equipment one final time. She carried no weapons, no armor, no special devices, just her uniform, her boots, and her wits. "Ryan, do you remember when we were in the academy and Professor Martinez gave us that impossible tactical problem?" Ryan nodded. "The one where we had to defend a space station against overwhelming odds with no weapons and no reinforcements?" "Right. And everyone in the class tried to solve it using conventional military tactics. They all failed. Except you," Ryan said, beginning to understand. "Except me. Because I didn't try to fight the enemy. I found a way to make them fight themselves." Lisa stood up and walked to the shuttle door. "That's what I'm going to do today." The shuttle ride to the arena was short, but tense. Lisa could see the massive coliseum growing larger as they approached. The structure was even more impressive up close, with towering walls and ancient carvings depicting battles from across the centuries. As they landed, Lisa could hear the roar of the crowd through the shuttle's hull. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species had come to watch the fight. Most were probably betting on how quickly she would die. The arena preparation chamber was a small room beneath the main floor. Lisa waited there alone, listening to the sounds above. She could hear an announcer speaking in the Zarkonian language, probably introducing the fighters and explaining the rules. A guard entered, one of the smaller Zarkonians who served the Empire in non-combat roles. He looked at Lisa with obvious confusion. "Human champion," he said in broken English. "Where is your weapon?" "I don't have one," Lisa replied calmly. The guard's eyes widened. He spoke rapidly into a communication device, apparently reporting this unexpected development to his superiors. After a few minutes of excited chatter, he looked back at Lisa. "King Vorthak wishes to know if you have forgotten your weapon." "Tell King Vorthak that I have brought exactly what I intended to bring." The guard translated this, then listened to the response. His expression grew even more confused. "The king says you are either very brave or very stupid." Lisa smiled. "Tell him he'll find out which one soon enough." The arena floor rose to meet her, as a platform lifted her up from the preparation chamber. The crowd noise was deafening as she emerged into the massive coliseum. Thousands of alien faces looked down at her from the stands, most showing amusement or contempt. Across the arena, another platform brought up King Vorthak. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed like black metal, and his energy staff hummed with deadly power. When he saw Lisa standing there with no visible weapons, he threw back his head and laughed. The sound echoed through the arena, and the crowd joined in. Lisa stood calmly in the center of the fighting floor, waiting for the laughter to die down. She used the time to study the arena's layout one final time, noting every pillar, every platform, every detail that might be useful in the coming fight. The arena master, an ancient Zarkonian with scars covering his face, raised his staff for silence. His voice boomed across the Colosseum as he announced the rules one final time. "Champions will fight until one is dead. No outside interference is permitted. The battle begins when the horn sounds." Lisa looked up at the stands and found the section where her crew was watching. Commander Brooks gave her a small salute. Dr. Kim had tears in her eyes. The rest of her people looked terrified but determined to support their captain. King Vorthak approached the center of the arena, his staff crackling with energy. He towered over Lisa, at least 2 feet taller and probably 3 times her weight. "Little, human," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "I will make your death quick for entertaining me with your foolishness." Lisa looked up at him without fear. "Your Majesty, you should know that humans have a saying. It's not the size of the fighter in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the fighter." The king's laugh was cut short by the sound of the horn. The battle for humanity's freedom had begun. The moment the horn sounded, King Vorthak raised his energy staff and fired a blast that could have vaporized a small building. The beam shot through the space where Lisa had been standing, but she was no longer there. Lisa had already started, moving before the horn finished echoing through the arena. She rolled to the side, using her smaller size and human agility to stay ahead of the king's attacks. The crowd expected her to charge forward or try to find cover, but instead she began running in what seemed like random patterns around the arena floor. King Vorthak fired again, this time aiming where he thought Lisa would be. But she changed direction at the last second, the energy beam missing her by inches and striking one of the arena's stone pillars. The ancient stone cracked and sent debris raining down onto the fighting floor. "Stand still and fight," the king roared, his voice echoing through the Colosseum. But Lisa had no intention of standing still. She continued her erratic movement pattern, forcing Vorthak to constantly adjust his aim. The Zarkonian king was incredibly strong and skilled, but his attacks were designed for opponents who fought in predictable ways. The crowd's initial laughter began to fade as they realized Lisa was actually avoiding the king's attacks. Some of the alien spectators leaned forward in their seats, trying to understand what the small human was doing. Lisa's strategy became clearer as the minutes passed. She wasn't just running randomly. She was studying the arena and using every feature to her advantage. When Vorthak fired at her near the eastern wall, she ducked behind a stone platform. When he tried to corner her near the center pillars, she slipped between them like water. "Coward!" King Vorthak shouted, growing frustrated. "Face me like a warrior," Lisa called back without stopping her movement. "I am facing you. I'm just not stupid enough to stand in one place while you shoot at me." This response drew surprised murmurs from the crowd. No challenger had ever spoken back to a Zarkonian king during combat. Most were too terrified or too focused on their own attacks. Vorthak's energy staff required a few seconds to recharge between shots, and Lisa had timed these intervals perfectly. During each recharge period, she would dart closer, forcing the king to try physical attacks with his claws or the staff itself. But Lisa had studied his fighting style from the recorded battles. She knew he would swing the staff in wide, powerful arcs designed to cut through armor and bone. She stayed just outside his reach, making him overextend himself with each swing. The arena floor began to change as the battle continued. Vorthak's missed energy blasts had damaged several pillars and created piles of rubble. What had started as a clean fighting space was becoming an obstacle course, and Lisa was using every new piece of debris to her advantage. 20 minutes into the fight, something unprecedented happened. King Vorthak began to slow down. His massive armor, designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb impacts, was also incredibly heavy. Combined with the energy drain of his staff, the constant movement required to chase Lisa was beginning to tire him. Lisa, meanwhile, had paced herself carefully. Her years of running on the ship's exercise track had built up her endurance, and her light clothing allowed her to move freely without overheating. "You cannot run forever, human," Vorthak growled, breathing more heavily than before. "I don't need to run forever," Lisa replied. "I just need to run longer than you can chase me." This exchange caused a stir in the crowd. The Zarkonians in the stands began talking among themselves in their harsh language. They had never seen their king struggle against an opponent, especially one who seemed so weak and helpless. Vorthak tried a different approach. Instead of chasing Lisa around the arena, he positioned himself in the center and waited for her to come to him. His energy staff hummed at full power, ready to fire in any direction. But Lisa didn't approach directly. Instead, she began circling him at a distance, always staying in motion. When he turned to track her movement, she would change direction, forcing him to constantly adjust his position. "This is not combat," one of the Zarkonian nobles shouted from the stands. "This is mockery." King Vorthak's pride was stung by the criticism. He abandoned his defensive position and charged at Lisa, his staff raised for a devastating blow. But Lisa had been waiting for this moment. She led him directly toward one of the damaged pillars, then dove aside at the last second. Vorthak's momentum carried him forward, and his staff struck the weakened stone pillar with tremendous force. The impact sent shockwaves through his arms and caused more debris to fall from the damaged structure. Lisa used his momentary disorientation to dart in close and deliver a series of quick strikes to the joints in his armor. Her attacks wouldn't have hurt a human, but she had studied Zarkonian anatomy with Dr. Kim. She knew exactly where the armor connections were weakest. The strikes did no real damage, but they served their purpose. King Vorthak realized that his opponent could actually reach him, despite his size and armor advantages. For the first time in decades of combat, he felt a moment of uncertainty. As the battle entered its second hour, the change in King Vorthak became obvious to everyone watching. His movements were slower, his breathing heavier. The energy staff that had seemed so fearsome at the beginning was now weighing down his arms. Lisa, by contrast, still moved with fluid grace. She had a few small cuts from flying debris, but she wasn't seriously injured. More importantly, she was still thinking clearly while her opponent was beginning to make mistakes born of frustration and fatigue. "How long can you keep this up?" Vorthak demanded, sweat now visible on his scaled face. Lisa smiled as she continued her constant motion around the arena. "As long as it takes, Your Majesty. Humans are very patient when we need to be." The crowd had gone from laughter to confusion to something approaching respect. Even the Zarkonians were beginning to appreciate the skill required to avoid their king's attacks for so long. This was unlike any battle they had ever seen. King Vorthak made one final attempt to end the fight quickly. He raised his energy staff above his head and channeled maximum power into it, preparing for a blast that would destroy half the arena floor. If he couldn't hit Lisa with precision, he would simply eliminate everywhere she could go. But the staff had been overused throughout the battle. As Vorthak poured energy into it, sparks began flying from the weapon's power core. The smell of burning circuits filled the air. Lisa saw the opportunity she had been waiting for. All her preparation, all her study of Zarkonian technology and psychology had led to this moment. She stopped running and stood perfectly still in the center of the arena, looking directly at King Vorthak. "Your weapon is failing," she said calmly. "Just like your empire will fail when other species realize that the mighty Zarkonians can be defeated by patience and intelligence instead of brute force." King Vorthak's roar of rage echoed through the arena as he triggered the overcharged energy staff. The weapon fired once, then exploded in his hands, sending him staggering backward toward the most damaged section of the arena floor. Lisa began running toward him, no longer evading but closing in for the finish. The real battle was about to begin. King Vorthak staggered backward from the explosion of his energy staff, his hands burned and his confidence shattered. For the first time in his long career as a warrior king, he found himself in a fight without his primary weapon. Lisa didn't waste the opportunity. She had studied the arena's construction during her weeks of preparation, and she knew exactly where the structural damage was worst. The energy blast that had missed her throughout the battle had weakened several key support pillars, creating exactly the situation she had hoped for. "Your Majesty," Lisa called out as she approached, "you seem to have misplaced your weapon. Perhaps you'd like to surrender?" The suggestion sent a wave of shock through the arena. No one had ever asked a Zarkonian king to surrender, and certainly not in single combat before thousands of witnesses. Vorthak's eyes blazed with fury. Despite his exhaustion and the loss of his staff, he was still a formidable opponent. His claws, extended to their full length and his powerful muscles tensed beneath his armor. "I will tear you apart with my bare hands, little human," he snarled. But Lisa had been counting on his anger. Rage made fighters predictable, and predictable opponents could be manipulated. She positioned herself carefully near the most damaged section of the arena, where several of his missed energy blasts had weakened the ancient stone pillars that supported the upper structure. King Vorthak charged toward her, his claws extended and his mouth open in a battle roar. Lisa waited until the last possible second, then dove to the side. The king's momentum carried him forward, and his massive weight struck the weakened pillar with tremendous force. The sound of cracking stone echoed through the arena as the pillar began to collapse. But Lisa's plan went beyond just dodging his attack. She had calculated the structural damage perfectly. As the first pillar fell, it brought down part of the upper architecture, which in turn put too much stress on the other damaged pillars. chain reaction of destruction began to spread across that section of the arena. Tons of ancient stone and metal began falling toward the arena floor, directly above where King Vorthak was trying to recover from his missed charge. The Zarkonian. King looked up just in time to see massive blocks of stone falling toward him. His armor, designed to protect against energy weapons and claw attacks, offered little protection against the crushing weight of the collapsing architecture. Vorthak threw himself forward, trying to escape the falling debris, but his earlier exhaustion slowed his reaction time. A massive stone block caught him across the legs, pinning him to the arena floor. More debris piled on top of him until only his head and one arm remained visible. The arena fell completely silent. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. A human, the smallest and apparently weakest challenger ever to enter the grand arena, had just defeated the mighty King Vorthak without throwing a single punch or firing a single shot. Lisa walked slowly toward the trapped king, her boots crunching on the scattered debris. Vorthak was still alive, but he was completely immobilized. Blood trickled from several wounds and his breathing was labored. "How?" he whispered as Lisa approached. "How did you know?" "I studied every battle you ever fought," Lisa replied. "You always won the same way, with superior strength and advanced weapons. But you never faced an opponent who refused to play by those rules." She knelt down beside the fallen king, bringing her face close to his. "You made one critical mistake, Your Majesty. You assumed that humans think like Zarkonians. You expected me to try to match your strength with strength, your technology with technology. But humans survive by being smarter, not stronger." King Vorthak stared at her with a mixture of pain and something that might have been admiration. "You used the arena itself as your weapon." "The arena, your own attacks, your pride, your expectations. Everything became a weapon once I understood how to use it." Lisa stood up and looked around at the destruction. The rules said each fighter could bring one weapon. They didn't say the weapon had to be something you carry. According to Zarkonian law, the victor in single combat had the right to execute the defeated opponent. Lisa picked up a jagged piece of metal from the debris, heavy enough to serve as a weapon, but instead of striking immediately, she did something that shocked every Zarkonian in the arena. She spoke to Vorthak in his own language, using phrases she had learned from Ben Carter's cultural studies. "Honorable opponent," she said, in carefully pronounced Zarkonian. "You fought with courage. Do you choose the warrior's death, or do you yield your crown and your life?" The crowd erupted in amazement. Not only had the human defeated their king, but she was offering him the traditional choice between death with honor or surrender. No alien challenger had ever learned enough about their culture to perform this ritual correctly. King Vorthak closed his eyes for a moment, considering his options. When he opened them again, there was respect in his gaze as he looked at Lisa. "You have earned the right to rule the Zarkonian Empire," he said formally. "But I choose the warrior's death rather than live as a defeated king." Vorthak reached up with his free hand and removed his ceremonial helmet, revealing his skull-like head. The gesture was deeply significant in Zarkonian culture, showing his acceptance of death and his respect for his conqueror. Lisa raised the metal shard above her head, then brought it down in one clean strike. King Vorthak died instantly without pain or fear. The arena remained silent as Lisa lifted the fallen king's head above her own, displaying the traditional trophy of victory. Then something unprecedented happened. The Zarkonian spectators began to cheer. Their applause wasn't for her victory over their king, but for the skill and honor she had shown in achieving that victory. She had beaten them, but she had done so in a way that earned their respect rather than their hatred. The arena master approached Lisa with obvious uncertainty. According to their laws, she was now the ruler of the Zarkonian Empire, but no one knew how to handle this situation. "What are your orders, Empress?" he asked formally. Lisa looked up at the thousands of aliens watching from the stands, then at the section where her crew was cheering and crying with relief. "I have no desire to rule your empire," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. "I fought to protect my people, not to conquer yours. I return sovereignty to the Zarkonian people, to choose their own leaders and their own destiny." She paused, still holding Vorthak's head high. But I do have one request. Let this be the end of forced challenges in conquered worlds. Let the Zarkonians be known for their honor and skill, not for their domination of weaker species. The crowd's cheers grew louder, and Lisa could see Zarkonian nobles in the stands talking excitedly among themselves. Her victory hadn't just saved humanity. It had given the Zarkonian people a chance to choose a different path for their empire. Lisa walked toward the exit platform, she caught sight of Commander Brooks and the rest of her crew. They were shouting and waving, their faces bright with joy and relief. She had kept her promise to bring them home safely. Hours later, back aboard the New Haven, Lisa sat in her ready room writing her official report. The Zarkonian fleet had already begun to withdraw, but not before their new leaders had requested formal peace negotiations with humanity. Commander Brooks entered with a cup of coffee and a smile. "Captain, I have to ask, how did you know that plan would work?" Lisa accepted the coffee gratefully and took a long sip before answering. "Honestly, I didn't know for certain, but I knew that doing what everyone expected would definitely fail, so I decided to try something that had never been attempted before." "And if it hadn't worked?" Lisa looked out the window at the stars, thinking about the 400 people on her ship who were now safe. Then at least humanity would have gone down fighting in our own way, on our own terms. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for. The New Haven resumed its journey toward New Terra, carrying not just colonists, but the news that humanity had found its place among the stars through courage, intelligence, and the willingness to think differently when survival was at stake. In the years that followed, the story of Lisa Martinez would be told across dozens of worlds, inspiring other species to find their own unique ways to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The arena on Kalos was eventually converted into a memorial to all the warriors who had fallen there, with a special place of honor for the human captain who had changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be strong.